deal was this?
All right, time to get back into it. What better way than to start with some new territory with the return?
Well, it's about time. What have you been doing?
Well, you know, stuff, things.
Okay, wait. The Return. Isn't that a Halloween movie? It's almost Christmas.
Yeah, yeah, it is. But I've never done a Halloween movie, so what better time than the present, right?
Wait. Is The Return a scary movie? I mean, technically. Why, are you some sort of scaredy cat? Perhaps? Okay, fine. Go watch some Hallmark Christmas movie with J-Bob's wife for all I care. Yeah, don't mind it if I do. Okay.
The movie begins with a young Joanna and her dad going to the fair. While her dad is getting some fair food, Joanna wanders off and notices a shadowy man in the distance. Not waiting to find out what he wants, she immediately darts under the table.
Wait a second, didn't he just watch her go under the table?
Well, yes, I believe so.
Look at that. She's basically asking him to be found with her hand sticking out like that.
I don't disagree, but she's just a kid. She's not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed.
Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on.
The man's feet show up in front of the table, but instead of him reaching under and grabbing her, her dad finds her instead. She tries explaining why she was hiding, but the man is now gone. Fast forward several years to Joanna getting dressed and running to work. Turns out she's a sales rep for a trucking company, and she's one of the best sales reps this company has. We know this because she interrupts her fellow coworker Kurt, asking the big boss man to let her sell the Marlin. The boss is unsure if Kurt can handle it, but is instantly swayed because Joanna's paperwork from a freshly sold account being so overly impressive, as opposed to Kurt just knowing the guy. So naturally, Joanna gets the job. It also helps because Joanna apparently has a friend that works for Marlin. He hasn't seen her in years, but that basically guarantees her a foot in the door. Joanna's boss mentioned that he thought Texas was off limits, likely due to the flashback the movie began with. Now, for some reason yet unexplained, Joanna decides it's time to be brave and go face her fears. Naturally, this ticks Kurt off, but Joanna slips out of avoiding additional confrontation. I guess this is supposed to establish the fact that Joanna is a go-getter, will rise to the occasion, and won't let anyone stand in her way, or something.
Right.
On the way, her radio begins acting up, playing Sweet Dreams.
Sweet dreams are made of the
She gets out of the truck, leaving it running, and notices broken glass, then two cars wrecked, but no people in or around either car. While trying to figure out what happened, the screen gets wider and wider until she wakes up in the middle of the field, about 20 or 30 feet away from her truck. Also, the wrecked cars and any trace of them are completely gone. She gets back in and continues on to go see Marlin.
Are we going to address the fact that she left her headlights running all night and the wreck is all cleaned up? No, the show must go on. Shut up, you. Go back to watching your movie. But seriously, what gives?
She arrives, greets her friend, then lands the account in 20 to 30 seconds by explaining Marlon's current trucking outfit doesn't have the capacity to keep serving them, and offering to cut her commission by 3%. She heads to the bathroom, the lights flicker like Nosferatu from SpongeBob is playing with them, and we get another flashback to Joanna and her dad in their car, singing a couple of songs before snapping right back to the present. While talking with her friend, the voice of the man from the fair begins cutting into the call, but when it stops, the friend has of course not heard the voice and says it's time to go get lit at the bar to celebrate landing the account. She's about to drive off when she notices an olive green car ominously parked behind her, as it's the same car the odd man drove. She ignores it and ends up at the bar and then says she's not feeling well and begins to make her way to the bathroom. She hears the voice again calling her sunshine before she jumps from the bumping club to a dive bar/saloon where the man bumps into her on her way inside. She takes cover inside a phone booth, pulls out a switchblade, and stabs herself in the arm. Yeah, because that's normal. I mean, who else just runs away from a assailant, hides in a giant phone booth with a glass door, and stabs yourself to get away from him?
Oh, I'm gonna get you.
Wait, what?
Oh, I gotta hide. Yeah. Come here, you little piece of crap. You're not getting away from me like that, is it? Oh, perfect. I'll hide under here. He can't be that stupid, can he? Oh no! I finally found you. You'll never take me alive! Yes. Ah! What the hell? I'm not even interested in this anymore.
Lurching back to the club, her friend finds her passed out, is asleep in the stall, the bleeding now having stopped, thankfully. Turns out this is a regular occurrence with Joanna, having flashbacks about some repressed memory from her childhood, leading her to her current lifestyle of living out of hotels and bouncing from place to place to sell contracts for her truncate company. So wait, this happens normally? Dreaming of a bar, passing out, and then before you pass out, you stab yourself and hopefully don't bleed out until the next morning. Who was there to help her when she did this crap? Did she just ask for a couple extra days on the job when she secretly had to run to the hospital to get a blood transfusion? Man, I feel bad for the janitor who found her the next morning.
Give them blood, blood, blood.
I don't get paid enough for this crap.
Over the next couple days, several incidents occur. While carefully poring over files, she decides to go to LaSalle, Texas, near where her father lives. She stops in briefly, decides to take some drawings and paintings from her childhood with her, and asks about LaSalle. Not having much to tell, he says that's where the car crash happened, and she was never quite the same afterward. And Joanna storms out after her dad says they couldn't control her, which is a pretty bad way of saying we didn't know why the self-harm started, and we didn't know what to do to get you to stop. She arrives in town and thanks to her flashbacks or memories she's unable to recall how she knows, finds the bar, and after escaping a potential rape from Kurt, meets Terry, a man who the whole town seems to have it out for. After letting herself into the house, having a brief vision of some girl and Terry in bed, she runs into Terry, who despite being irritated with letting herself in, offers to help her out if Kurt comes back or otherwise needs a hand. She meets Terry for lunch, has a brief run-in with a man calling her Sunshine, followed by a quick game of hide and seek with her shoving the man into some machinery, running back to the hotel for a quick jump scare in her room, and running back to the safety of Terry's house, where she again lets herself in to see that same lady from earlier walk into the barn. Instinctively, she follows, sees something, rushes back to her truck to get her artwork, and realizes it matches exactly. A flashback occurs of the woman getting stabbed, ripping out the man's earring, then the assailant walking off, but not before dropping the knife into the gas cap door. And since she's in that weird mode, she stabs herself in the gut and passes out. Terry finds her, supposedly slaps a band-aid on her stab wound, and discusses who Annie is. Terry explains who she is, that the town blames him for her murder. When Joanna sees the earring hanging from his necklace, stating that it's not Annie's, Terry then gets angry and throws her out for being too nosy. Joanna is also upset and decides to leave town, since she's not sure why she was drawn to the town to begin with and have an awkward date with Terry, find out who Annie was, and still not gotten to the bottom of it all. Before leaving town for good, she stops to get some snacks from the garage, and while checking it out, recognizes a man in the picture on the wall. After asking who it is, he just says he's some handsome buck, and while Joanna's trying to piece it together, the garage worker calls her Sunshine, but doesn't remember that she was the one he chased through the cattle auction house after Terry and Joanna's date. Frazzled, she heads back to her truck, but stops when noticing the green car from her dreams with the gas cap missing. Instinctively, she remembers the flashback from where she stabbed herself and knows right where to look for the knife, easily finding it. When confronted, she lies about needing some parts, but then drives off before grabbing them, because of course the two didn't know she was up to something. Before she can get out of town, tow truck juts out in front of her, causing her to fly off the road and into the creek below. The last 15 to 20 minutes consist of jumping back and forth between the present of Joanna and Annie's memories, kind of blending together, so I'll try to put it together as quick as I can. Joanna somehow survives the 20 to 30-foot launch fall off the bridge and begins running to Terry's barn, with the garage attendant, Griff, following not too far behind. Terry had meanwhile decided it was time to jump town after packing up and boarding up his house. Eventually reaching the barn and hiding herself in the shadows, Griff enters, bars the door, searches for and finds her, letting her get away after playing a quick game of grabby hands. Terry decides to head back for some reason and heads to the barn and then simply walks in, where Griff begins pummeling him because why not? Joanna waits in the shadows, waiting for the best time to strike. All the past sequences showed Annie running into Griff and his buddy, meeting up with Terry, Griff being angry about being blown off by Terry, and chasing Annie into the barn and then murdering her. Right before Annie gets murdered, Joanna sees the opportunity and instead of stabbing herself this time, stabs Griff in the gut. Looking down incredulously, he lunges at her, just to fall down and get stabbed in the neck, seeing Annie before falling, and then slowly dies. Terry decides to drive off with Joanna, leaving the town behind once and for all. However, upon approaching the intersection, Joanna recognizes it as the one she and her dad were hit at all those years ago. Turns out it was Terry, who, while trying to rush to the hospital, gets momentarily distracted by trying to keep Annie conscious and sideswipes Joanna and her dad, which causes enough trauma to finally send Annie to her death, but not before promising to find Terry again someday. Joanna's dad is just fine, but Joanna sustained a head injury and takes several moments to wake up abruptly right after Annie makes her promise to Terry. Joanna gets out of the car, processes all of this, and gets back into the car with Terry, ending the film. So what have we learned? For some reason, Joanna psychically linked to Annie while she was dying. Supposedly, these cuttings and stabbings Joanna had been experiencing had been going on for a while, and no one really thought about it because she was really good at hiding it. I feel like we were left with a lot more questions than answers, honestly. I mean, I guess all the flashbacks explained that Annie was feeding Joanna her memories, which kind of explains the cutting and the seahorse obsession that Joanna's dad never thought was unusual. Are we ever going to find out? Where will Joanna and Terry go now? And are they an item now? Because Terry realized that Annie kind of possessed Joanna, and he helped solve the years-old cold case murder? What happened to the other attendant who appeared to be an accomplice in Annie's murder? Better yet, why did Griffey want to kill Annie to begin with? Did Terry used to work at the same garage and he kept stealing all the clients and Griffey finally had enough of it? Or was it just sudden jealousy after getting snubbed? What happened to Kurt? Will he ever get the next big sale for the trucking company? Or will Joanna swoop in and steal it again? Better yet, who cares? Aside from the screams and mild jump scares, the tensest moment is when Griff finds Joanna in the barn, farts around for a few minutes before getting shanked and stabbed in the neck, all the while firing between the past and present and giving the weak connection between Annie and Joanna some credibility. Granted, I'm glad it doesn't develop into this mindless torture and mayhem like a lot of movies do these days. Leaving some stuff to your imagination can make the movie a lot better most of the time. Here, not so much. I'd give this film a rating of 2 out of 5 stars. It does tell a story and answers the question of why Joanna and Annie were linked, albeit weakly, passed off as either possession or really strong emotions Annie left behind in order to keep her promise. Mild suspense, relatively few screams and chases, but mostly just wanting closure for how Joanna survives the situation kept me going. Being a whodunit/murder mystery that doesn't become apparent until almost halfway through, replay value is low. I guess if you really want to see Buffy the Vampire Slayer fumble her way through a film for an hour and a half, then that's something. All in all, check it out if you feel so inclined. As for me, I'm out of here. Until next time.